So this month was kind of a disappointment. Not that I did not get some reading done. I actually finished 10 books last month. Actually 9.5. I finished the second, like a third of the remaining book in June, but I'm still going to consider it as part of my May wrap-up because I read most of it in May and I want it to be part of my May wrap-up. Sue me. So it's not a bad reading month. It's just that I was meant to participate in 3 readathons. Then I dropped it to 2, and even the 2 readathons I was going to participate in, I did not read as many books as I wanted to. I wanted to finish all the challenges. Although technically, if we're counting it, like when you consider it, I actually did get to a lot of the prompts. It's just my TBR went to shit, which just goes to show that for me to get any form of reading done these days, I can't have a TBR.
To be talking to you, Belladonna. Should have taken a break, not an Oxford comma. Take what I want when I wanna. And I want you.
Hello everybody, Nora back again. So we'll start with the very first book I started this month, which was 1,000 Beginnings and Endings, edited by Ellen O and Elise Chapman. Now I say I started, but I actually did finish this book. Did I just say this month? Sorry, I meant May. Yes, I started this book in May, I finished it in May. Yes, this was not the book I did not finish in May. I finished this book in May, and this is basically a compilation of short stories. And each short story is a retelling of an Asian myth. And if you've spent any amount of time on my channel, you know how much I love mythology. Mythology is my kink. It's been a big deal for me ever since I was a kid. I love it. I love mythological stories. I love being able to understand myths and these mythical beings and these gods and goddesses and demigods and the way humans and gods have always interacted in myth and what is said about the human experience, and especially because it ultimately humanized whatever god we were reading about. Like, so it didn't matter exactly how powerful they were. They got angry, they got jealous, they got envious, they loved, they hated with the same amount of passion a human would. And I always love that about myth. So I really love myth, like really love myth. So when I saw that this was a compilation of myth stories, I was like, I had to get it. Secondly, it was a group book for the Asian readathon, and it just confirmed to me that this was definitely a book I absolutely had to read. Funniest about it was that I'd picked up this book even before the Asian readathon came along. So when it came along, I'm like, it's kismet. Like, the universe already said buy this book, because I'd seen it and I like myth. I loved it. And thankfully, this was the one book I read throughout the Asian readathon. But the good thing about it was that it meant I fulfilled a lot of the prompts. So, yeah, I'm thankful for that. Okay, so what actually gave this? I gave this book a solid 4 stars, and I gave it 4 stars because of the fact that, one, I am clearly already biased. I'm clearly biased. Like I said initially, I love myth. So the fact that I was just reading about mythological stories definitely did it for me. I also love the fact that there was such diversity in the stories. These were myths that were drawn from like different Asian cultures. Like, there were Korean stories and there's Japanese, Chinese among. There was a Punjabi story in this. There was a Gujarati story in this, and I love just seeing. There was a Vietnamese story in this. So I love seeing, and quite a lot of South Asian stories. So I love seeing that diversity. I love seeing just how each myth differed, and it was magical and mythical, and I loved it. Of course, the thing about a lot of anthologies, especially when it's like written by different authors, is that the beauty, the strength of each story differs story to story. So there are some stories you read and they're like really good, and there are some stories you read that are not so good, or not, I won't say not so good, but there are some stories that you read and you really love, and there are some that you're like, this story was not for me. And that was the case with this. A lot of the stories I loved. A lot of the stories I enjoyed. The stories I loved, I really loved. And the story, because it's singular, because it was really only one story I really didn't really enjoy as much in this book. And that was Spear Carrier by Rahul Kanakia, which, see, I want to read the Mahabharata. It's one of those epic poems I've always wanted to read, like Odyssey, Troy, the Aeneid. There's just something about reading the actions and the repercussions and these epic stories and love stories and tragedies that's written as poetry that just gets to me. So the Mahabharata is one of those epic poems I want to read. I'm definitely looking for my copy. because you have to get the right translated version for you to really enjoy epic poetry. So I'm actually looking for the right one, but I've always wanted to read it. So when I saw that Spear Carrier was based off of the story, one of the stories in the Mahabharata, and I was like, oh my god, this is going to be so good. So I guess maybe because I entered that relationship with expectations, you know, and I was not blown away. And I guess that is also because of the fact that, you see, these are retellings of myths. A lot of them did stick to that. A lot of them did draw inspiration from that. But most of the story for Spear Carrier was not told from the perspective of the characters in the myth. It was told from the perspective of a man who was interacting with the characters from the myth. And it just, that disconnect, I'm not going to lie, I found it very boring. I think Spear Carrier was like my weakest link in this entire anthology. I didn't really like it. I remember I was writing, I'm like, okay, why? I found it boring. I could not really relate to the characters. Like, I love the fact that it's the actual mythology tries to, you know, answer what the purpose of life is, and the fact that some people just die because, you know, they just have to die. It's not necessarily that there's something, their deaths have to have meaning, is for some sort of greater good. And I love the fact that, the characters questioned it. The farming crab who was giving spears to fight. That was big. That was like my favorite character in the entire story. And that's saying a lot, because I love that crab. I was so happy that crab got the chance to go home. I sincerely hope that crab marries and is like very, very happy and satisfied with his life. I'm just saying, like, I love that crab. But see, that's the thing. Like, I was reading it and I'm like, okay, but the story, from what I could tell, the little of the story that did not, like, the actual myth itself, the fact that it did not play such a crucial role in the story, and when I got just a glimpse of what the myth was, I wanted more of that myth and less of what we got, and I was just very disappointed. So I definitely was not a big fan of Spear Carrier. And there was a part in the book when it was like, the man was very dark skinned, but he didn't quite have the features of a black or African person, so I can't really say what race he was supposed to be. And I remember I read that part, I'm like, what the fuck? What do you mean by black or African person? Africans are black. Like, there's a difference between saying, if he was an African American or an African person or a British, but when you say black, you mean generally, you're referring to the race. And then you go black or African, and I was just confused because the all just seemed like okay. And then when he went I can't really say what race he was supposed to be. And all I'm thinking is that black is the race. Am I missing something? That part was just weird. And I remember I took note of it. I wrote and I'm like, what the fuck is that supposed to be? So yes, my favorite story though, actually I had a couple of favorites in this. I love Forbidden Fruit. I love the fact that, you know, we got this perspective of the mountain, the spirit of the mountain, and how in love with she was, and the tragedy of the fact that she was so human in her reaction, but in the love she felt was also human. And the tragedy of the fact that if she had just looked a little bit closer, she would have said that was not her love, and that her love was dead at the base, like right at the entrance of the village. Like that story was heartbreaking. And I love the fact that there was that marked contrast, right? The mountain at the start, because Forbidden Fruit by Roshani Chokshi was what started the anthology for us, and we ended the anthology with Eyes Like Candlelight by Julie Kagawa. And I love the fact that both of these stories were all about mythical women who fell in love with humans, whose human lover died. But the thing about it is that the way each of them reacted was so different. One person was paying close attention, the other wasn't. And although both stories ended in tragedy, one was able to get the vengeance my heart wanted, and the other wasn't, just because she was not able to pay attention. Like, I just love the fact that each one of those stories, the anthology started with a goddess in love and the tragedy that comes when a human lover dies, and then we just saw the different ways in which the stories could have told. Like, one went one way and the other one went the other, and I just love that. I also love Olivia's Table. I don't know, ghost stories always get to me, and your belief that, you know what, during this festival, the fact that it's based off of this festival, when the ghosts come out and when you feed them, they find peace and succor and they leave. Like, that just, it warmed my heart, because food has always been a very fulfilling experience for me. I did have an eating disorder. It's something I still battle occasionally, and I just have to remind myself of just how important food and nutrition and feeding your soul, feeding your body, and what it automatically means with what it automatically means with regards to feeding your soul and spirit, like how it's all connected. I really love that. I loved Still Skin. I did not see where it was. I did not expect it to go in the direction it did, so I was pleasantly surprised when it did, but I still loved it. Still Star-Crossed. Oh my god, haunting story, especially when it's romance, and I'm like, on one moment I'm like, that is so romantic, on the other end, like when you get to the end, you're like, oh my god, that is so creepy, but that is also so romantic. Like, I love the fact that story messed with my mind so much, like it was a mind fuck. But it was just the tragedy, and then what it said about being caught in a loop and not being able to move forward. And is the loop romantic or is it creepy? I love the fact that, you walk away from that story wondering that The Counting of a Million Beads, being able to turn an original story that is all about sister jealousy and sisters hurting and killing each other into something that celebrates that bond. Like, I love stories about sisters, I love stories about siblings, and I love the fact that Sonacharai Potra turned it on its head and gave us such a fantastic story. The Land of the Morning Calm, I love video game stories, and I also love stories about the underworld, but I didn't connect with it as much as the other stories. I liked it a lot more than the Spear Carrier. The Spear Carrier is still my least favorite stories in this entire anthology, but I wish I had gotten more. I just felt this disconnect from the character. I enjoyed it. I especially loved when we got to the underworld scene, and we were trying to do that negotiating bit and that bit of mythology. I love that, but I didn't connect as much with it as I did the others. The Smile, see, every story that talks about concubines and us trying to answer that question of, do you really have agency if you are the concubine of a king, even when it is that, okay, you've fallen in love with the prince. And the fact that the story, like when you read about the actual story and the tragic turn it took, realizing that Aisha Saeed gave us this perfect, beautiful, feminist ending just makes me so fucking happy. I love this. Oh my god, I love The Smile. Definitely one of those favorite stories. Girls Who Twirl and Other Dangers. It was fun, it was cutesy. I definitely loved it more than Land of the Morning Calm. Fun and cutesy teenagers. I actually was more invested in Dogaji's story than I was in, the actual celebration, but what can I say? I'm biased, but I did enjoy it. It was fun, it was cute. Nothing Into All was heartbreaking because it read like the traditional fairy tale, a brother and sister, jealousy, what guilt, the role and effect guilt plays on a family, and what it in turn means for the person, the child that everybody else feels guilty towards, and like how that contributes to their upbringing and the eventual person that they turn to, and sibling sacrifice and rivalry. Like, I love that. It was like your traditional fairy tale, so that wasn't one of my favorites, but I did enjoy it, and I loved seeing Asian goblins. Like, so already gave my thoughts about Spear Carrier. Code of Honor, you know what, like, I felt that the fact that I would have enjoyed it more, but except for the fact that I felt that Melissa, because that was written by Melissa, yes, I felt like, okay, Melissa de la Cruz told that story like a part of a larger universe, which was my problem with it. It was not a complete story in itself. It felt like, oh, it was a segue into a larger world, or she had written a larger worlds like series, and that was just like connected to it, and so it didn't seem like a story that would stand on its own for me, which I had a problem with, because when you're writing an anthology, have the stories be complete. Like, this story was complete, yes, but it still left that taste like this is meant to just have you Google Melissa's other story so that you can read more about that world, and maybe it says a lot that, oh, I'm more intrigued about the world. It's just that at the last moment she brought in new mythological beings, and the story just did a total U-turn when we started talking about the Blue Bloods, which I had a problem with that. The idea of Filipino vampires, though, I love that. I just wish she had not suddenly brought in Blue Bloods, and then it seemed like, oh, whatever. Like, it just, especially the way it ended, it just seemed like you will go and read a book and you will still find these exact same characters in another larger book. That's just how that story, that's how Code of Honor read for me. Bullet Butterfly, Ellis Chapman broke my, this was so romantic and so sad, and I loved it, and I cried, and I smiled, and I was in love, and I was heartbroken all over again. Like, war is hard, and teenagers, when you think about that epic passion and love, especially when they are depicted in myth and classics, like, it's just heartbreaking. But it was so beautiful, it was so heartbreakingly sad and beautiful, and I loved it. Daughter of the Sun, I also really actually loved it. I did have a problem with the fact that, oh, you know, one of the characters was not telling the other character the truth, and but so when it was that the truth ended up coming out, like she ended up telling the truth and everything, I like the way the story was resolved. I liked how smart she was, and I'm definitely interested in reading the actual myth that it's based off of. Actually, to be honest, I'm interested in reading the actual myth that all these stories are based off of. So definitely a brilliant job done there. The Crimson Cloak was also cute. I love that whole story of finding out exactly how the Milky Way came to be and the planet. Like, I loved it. I love the Crimson Cloak. I love the Crimson Cloak. I love the fact that it gave a spin. Like, from what we read, we understood how the original the mythology went, and the way it was spun. I love the way it ended. I just love that. And of course, I've already shared my thoughts about Eyes Like Candlelight. So definitely a 4-star read. I loved it. So the next book I read was Truthwitch by Susan Dennard. Now, this is the book that I said I started in May and finished in June, and that is because, not gonna lie, like, I found this book a very slow start. Like, it started well, and I thought that, oh my god, yes, we are on a high, because if you know me, you know how much I love female friendship. Like, I love female friendship. I love reading books about girls coming together and kicking butt. Like, if they fall in love, sure. If they don't fall in love, but they are still so fucking close that they are a team. I love it. I love stories like that. So when I was told that, okay, this book had like this badass female friendship, I was like, sign me the fuck yeah. So yeah, I picked up Truthwitch. The beginning, very interesting, and then it goes okay, like it's ascending, and then it just goes down, and then levels, and then picks up again. Like, that was my relationship with this book, and the reason why I did not finish it till June, because I started it and then there were other interesting things that came up. Namely, I had an entire series of books to finish, but even without it, I got bored, and a lot of it was connected to the world building in this book. I love the way the witcheries in this book works, you know, especially the ones in which we had an idea of. I love the way Truthwitch works. I especially love Thread Witches. Love the way in which Susan Dennard was describing how, you know, Thread Witches can, you know, read your threads, read your emotions, read exactly what connects the threads that connect multiple people. Reading that, I found very fascinating. I could spend the entire book just reading about Thread Witches. Where are they from? What do they do? And that was my problem with this book. See, a typical book, especially a book in a set of series, each book in the series has a central plot, right? The series has a central overarching plot that you're going to take throughout the entire book eventually. But each book of the series at its core is meant to focus on a particular plot. So, what was the central plot in this? Safi had to get to some island. That was the central plot. What was the conflict? She had a blood witch on her heels. That was the conflict. Do we care about the goals or the conflicts? Surely enough, I actually cared more for Merrick. I cared more for Iseult. I cared more for Adian. I cared more for a lot of people more than I did Safi, because I just couldn't connect with Safi. But my main gripe with this book is that, like I said, the central plot of this book I did not find gripping. I found the overarching plot of the series interesting, and that is what is going to keep me reading on, because I'm definitely intrigued. And I think that Susan Dennard wrote this book and was like, oh, this is where I want to take the entire series, and got so carried away with that she did not take the time to actually fully flesh out the plot of this singular book, because the plot of Truthwitch is slightly boring, not gonna lie. My favorite characters though, Iseult, fantastic. Edwin, I want to know more about him. Merrick, yes, please. Like, I don't think I started liking Safi until like the later part of the books. Like, I found that funny in the beginning, and then in the middle I'm like, how many dumbass mistakes can you make, girl? What the heck is wrong with you? Like, seriously, what the fuck? But I'm not going to get into that. The other gripe I had with this book was the world building. See, like I said, I'm fascinated by the witchery of the characters, but I had questions, right? And when you're building me a world, let me have an idea. Let me have a vague idea. So how exactly do the witcheries work, right? Is it a select few, or is it a lot of people that have it, right? And then you cannot just randomly be dropping powers. Oh, like, even in the start, like, introduce me to these things, right? I don't need you to hold my hands and dumb things down for me, but don't just throw up random names and words and phrases and tell me that is world building. Because in world building, I should be invested in the world, not closing the book in confusion and trying to be like, what is the connection? Who is this and all of that? So you can't just say, oh, ether witch, poison witch. Oh, it cannot be the Car Owen because she's an ether witch. Why? What's the difference? What's the difference between an ether witch and a void witch? Why are void witches so scared and ether witches are not? Poison witch, iron witch. How can the head of poison witches be an iron witch? What is the connection between poison and irons? Like, you explained the difference between, a water witch and a poison witch, and I could kind of see it, although doesn't that also imply that poison witches can only work with liquids, when we all know that there are other non-liquid forms of poison? Like, I had questions. When I start questioning this world that you're building, then I know that there's a problem with the world building, because I'm like, okay, why? What is happening? And then the random empires, just dropping them, and like, just naming empires does not world building make. You just drop a lot of names and countries and territories, and I'm confused. Like, the emperor of the Katora Empire, why is it that, okay, the Matstocks, the Nobrevans can pull back? So how big is the Katoran Empire, right? Is the Katoran Empire, is this like Westeros, right? Where, sure, there are individual lands, but they all still answer to the one king of Westeros, right? Or is it that these are just individual kings running their own lands, and then they have a treaty? So why is it that why is it that the emperor seems to have so much powers and everybody's like attending to him and bowing to him if they are all individual kings of their own territory? Like, I had a problem with the world building. I did love Iseult and Safi's relationship and friendship. I wish that they had spent more time together, because that was what I was promised. And even at the end, I'm just confused. I love Edwin. I love Edwin's backstory. The puppeteer has me really, really intrigued. I want to see where that goes. Like I said, my problem with this book is the fact that Susan Dennard concentrated so much on building the overarching plot and did not concentrate on the plot of this book. And that was my problem with it. So I gave it a 3.5 stars. But I did like the ending. Like, she writes very, very good, strong action scenes. And I love the way in which she wrapped up the story. And I cannot wait to see what happens in Windwitch, because I think the second book is Windwitch. And that is definitely a book I am reading this month, because I want to know what happens next. But, yeah, that is my thoughts about Truthwitch. 3.5 stars. I doubt if I'm going to round it up to 4 stars on Goodreads, though. It's probably going to be a 3 stars on Goodreads, but a 3.5 stars, and I'm intrigued, and I want to know what happens next. So, and now the next set of books I actually read all the books in the Throne of Glass series. Yes, I was that bitch. May was that month. What can I say? I love to binge read, especially when it's a series I'm really, really enjoying and that builds up over time, and also because what can I say? I'm Sarah J. Maas trash. So the very first book I read was Assassin's Blade by Sarah J. Maas, of course. Now this is a collection of novellas that basically act as a prequel. I know that these books came out, I think they came out after Queen of Shadows. Yes, it came out after Queen of Shadows, before Empire of Storms, and but I didn't read it in that order. I actually read it because these were prequels, and I was told that Throne of Glass, the first book in the series, was not so good. But if I read Assassin's Blade, I would have enough of an idea of the world and enough of an idea of who Selena was as a character, and I might just enjoy it. So I read Assassin's Blade first. I actually did enjoy it. I gave it a 4 stars. I love the fact that we actually got introduced to the world. We understood the character, where the character was coming from. I love the fact that she was not just stereotypical assassins. Like, a lot of assassins are dark and brooding and tortured and tormented, and sure, Selena has gone through shit, which we eventually find out later on in the series. But she loves books, she loves dresses, she loves chocolates, she loves pretty things. Like, who says she cannot love pretty things and still want to slit a man's throat? Like, now, these were 5 novellas, right? And the very first novella was my least favorite. I think it was because I was just getting into the world and I was just trying to understand a character, but I was not really as engrossed as I thought I would be. Our relationship with Sam at that point was still slightly boring, so I was just like, okay. But by the time the slaves show up, the whole part of the slaves shows up in Assassin and the Pirate Lord, I sat up and then I started actually giving a shit and taking note of her and be like, okay, I love where this is going. And then the fact that she was so cocky, but she also had a code of ethics, and she was also very vain. I loved that combination, and actually very strong. She did kick ass. I love that combination of character traits. Then by the time we got to the assassin and the healer, and we saw her again, and we saw exactly what Arobin had done to her, that short glimpse of what Arobin did to her, I was like, what the fuck? But I love Assassin and the Healer because any book that has women training other women how to defend themselves, I don't care. It gives me this really, really big high, because it just makes me very happy. I do think that women coming together to teach each other how to defend themselves, to teach each other how to find their own strength, and to not settle for what society is giving you, no matter where you're coming from, and to pursue your dreams. Like, see, the little bit about this, I love the fact that this novella set up the groundwork for me to understand exactly the type of character Selena is. So Assassin and the Pirate Lord, I knew that she was someone that was concerned about slaves, and would take a stance, even though she knows it's going to bite her in the ass. She has a strong code that she's not going to break it. In Assassin and the Healer, here was somebody who was an assassin, but was also willing to help another girl pursue her dreams of being a healer, was willing to train her and teach her self-defense, and also gave her the admonition that wherever she goes, she should also teach other women about self-defense. But how to recognize the fact that this could have been the journey / direction her life took, but didn't. But she's still going to help support this other girl's dream. I love that. Books about women helping other women always gets to me. Now, by the time we get to the Assassin and the Desert, and we see her friendship with Ansel, and seeing exactly how she's relating with the silent assassins, actually, and the fact that, the shock and horror we got a fuller glimpse of exactly what Arobin did to her, and that broke my heart. I was like, what the fuck, what kind of asshole is that? And then seeing that short glimpse of Sam, I started, okay, I did not believe in their relationship in Assassin and the Pirate Lord, but in Assassin and the Desert, I started seeing it. And that one sentence that she could distinctly remember Sam yelling at Arobin got to me. The betrayal that she faced in the desert got to me. Her stealing a horse, love that shit. Goddamn. Us seeing who she is, what she stood for, and even having other assassins assess, her choice in Assassin and the Pirate Lord. I loved that part. I love that part. I love the fact that she found a bit of a community. She found betrayal, but at the same time, she was going back home sure of herself and the choices and the decisions she was going to make and what her worth was. And then we got to Assassin and the Empire, and for a short period of time, seeing that rivalry with Lysandra, Arobin was pissing me the fuck up. Watching her relationship with Sam grow even more in that instance, I love that. I love that. I really enjoy that. Seeing her now cocky, now healed, and the decision she made, like the assassin and the underworld was my favorite part of this entire novella, because that was before we felt pain. That was before we knew what was coming our way. That was when we still felt that happiness was in store and we're like all oblivious and blind to what was coming. So Assassin and the Underworld was my favorite. Assassin and the Empire broke me, destroyed me. I was heartbroken. And my name is Sam Cortland. I will not be afraid. Just, it was heartbreaking. Even at the point when I was screaming at her that don't be so fast, don't be so reckless. Why? Like, it was heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking. And that was, now just imagine, it was the way the Assassin and the Empire ended. That was where my head was at when I started Throne of Glass. So I gave this a 4 stars. And then I picked up Throne of Glass, which is officially the first book in the Throne of Glass series. Selena in this book has been rescued from the Endovia Mines. Now, the Endovia Mines was where she was exiled to at the end of Assassin and the Empire because of a particular decision and a particular somebody that we hope rots in hell. So she's rescued from the Endovia Mines and set in to enter this big competition being hosted by the king, where he wanted to pick a champion, basically a champion assassin. And Selena is the best in the business, but in this book she does not really show her skills. She's not really as much of an assassin, and it was very slow. It dragged a lot. If not for the fact that I'd read the Assassin's Blade and I'd loved her character, I would have been so pissed, because there was not that much world building, there was not that much assassination, there was not that much kicking butts in this book. But a lot of the decisions and a lot of the words she was saying, I connected more with it because I'd read the prequels. So I loved her more. It was the goodwill that had been built into Assassin's Blade that I took into Throne of Glass. And so that was why I actually did semi-enjoy this. But I'm not going to lie, the pacing was off. The world building was not. Selena was annoying. She didn't really do as much killing, but I still love her because she's Selena Sadothian. And she had owned my heart from the very first set of prequels. And I was also intrigued and invested in the other characters. I wanted to know more about Nehime. I wanted to know more about Kale. Dorian pissed me off in this book. He was pompous. He was annoying. Wow, character arc, isn't it? But yeah, so I think back and like, this book just confirms what I know about Sarah J. Maas. The very first book she writes in the series is not necessarily her strongest, because she's still getting used to the characters and getting used to the world, and it does pick up eventually. But this, if you want to start the series, I still suggest like read Assassin's Blade first, because Throne of Glass was still kind of iffy, but I appreciated some things in it. So the stakes for the competition was very low. The challenges were not very challenging, and I know I was saying, I'm like, seriously, this is how you pick your champion? What the fuck? But yes, I was not the biggest fan of it. I gave it a 2.75 stars, but I rounded it up to 3 stars on Goodreads. So it's about a 2.753 stars read for me. If I'm okay, 3 stars actually. I'll give it the 3 stars. Yes. Next, I read Crown of Midnight, of course, also by Sarah J. Maas. And this is where things definitely picked up for me, because in this book, we definitely had more assassin Selena. And you know me, I love assassins. So this book just... This was when the series slowly started picking up for me. I did give it as a 4 star because it had not yet reached 5-star status, but it was definitely immensely better than Throne of Glass. The world building the pacing was better in this. We had a better understanding of the world by this point. Seeing Selena shine as an assassin was really, really great. The only thing that pissed me off about this was the fact that there was now what they call it, there was that stupid ass love triangle. Like, you all know how much I hated love triangles. Now, Dorian in the first book was annoying the fuck out of me, and the fact that Sarah J. Maas thought at some point that it could make a viable love interest just got to my nerves, because I'm like, why? Like, because at this point, this was the point where I was like, do you know what? I saw them better as friends. Like, I could see her relationship with Dorian and the possibility, the strength of that friendship. And then Kale was in this and their relationship was working so well. I'm like, oh my god, I love them together. And although the beginning of the book was kind of slow, like the start of Crown of Midnight, it was like Sarah J. Maas was still like, okay, I'm still slowly getting out of, like, you know, Throne of Glass, and I'm writing the second book and stuff like that. So you could see that the start of this book was kind of slow. By the time we hit the middle point, by the time you know what happened to you know who, and Selena motherfucking snapped, and Kale's face will forever remember her snapping, that was when this book picked up for me, because I was like, bloody hell. I felt every ounce of emotion and rage and grief and pain that she felt in that moment. Like, how do I explain how much I love the fact that Selena is, she makes such deep bonds. She's someone that loves deeply, and when she loves deeply, it means that the betrayal runs even darker, even deeper for her, and she will lash out for that. And I love seeing that. I love the fact that she was still wearing pretty dresses. She still loved reading books. She still loved chocolates and sweets, but she was more badass in this book. Like, we did not see her go into any form of killing mode in Throne of Glass. Even, let's be honest, there was a little bit of killing in Assassin's Blade, but it's in Crown of Midnight that you're like, she's unrepentant and she's going to kill, and I love it for that. Something else I loved about this book, like Fleetfoot, I want that. I'm not a dog person. I love cats, but Fleetfoot, I want to adopt that dog. That dog is adorable. Something else I loved in this book, Mort. I want a Mort. I want to hang a Mort on my door. I can just imagine all the things you'll be telling my neighbors. Like, just imagine him running commentary on your neighbors and my life as well, because yeah, he's going to definitely have high opinions about, you know, the kind of life I'm living. I don't mind though. I can live with Mort. I'll just stuck a sock in his mouth every time he's annoying me, but just, I want me a doorknob like that. I love seeing Selena I love seeing Selena like shine and show her skills and show that, okay, all these points when they've been saying that, oh, she's the best assassin, she's the Empire's best assassin, she's the best assassin, like, it was in this book that we actually got more of an idea of exactly how good an assassin she is actually. I love Nehemiah's story. I was heartbroken about where her story ended, and I was angry because of, you know, the decisions that she took to lead her to that point. But Selena and Grave, that scene, that motherfucking scene, Kale coming back and telling us how, you know, Grave was at the end, that brought so much joy, so much happiness to my life. And the end, the twist at the end, when Kale finally finds out exactly who she really is, when we find out who she really is, her full name, like, I remember I read that part and I'm like, what the fuck? God damn. Like, I give this a 4-star, like I said. At this point, I was now definitely invested in the series, and I'm like, okay, I'm definitely intrigued. I want to know more. And then I picked up this baby over here, Heir of Fire, also by Sarah J. Maas, and goddamn. See, it's the same thing I said with the Akotar series. I love stories that center a woman coming into terms with who she is, every aspect of herself, owning her power and owning who she really is. And that's technically what Heir of Fire is. And I think that is actually that's the kind of story that Sarah J. Maas does best. Like, when she starts going into character-driven books, that is all about, you know, characters basically coming to terms with who they are, coming to terms with the darkness and the light, and realizing that they are who they are, human, flawed, fae, but still with that strength, that amazing, remarkable strength. When that happens, when that hits, when our characters have hit absolute rock bottom and then slowly start to rise, that is when it's a beauty to read. And that is why I love this book. As always, I love books where we get training montages, where we get characters who are already badass learn to be even more badass, learn to control their power, learn to own their power to be the very best of what they could possibly be. And I also love it when we introduce love interests that basically see the best in these characters and push them to be better versions of themselves is what I loved about Rhys. Is definitely also what I loved about Rowan Whitethorn in this book. I love the fact that this book we were following like 3 individual characters, like 4 actually, when you think about it, technically 4 characters, and then we find out, like, you know, how they all intersect and intertwine like later in the book. But this was the book where we first got introduced to the love of my life, Manon Blackbeak. I know a lot of people read this book, so at each other like, oh my god, she's a witch, she's this. I don't like the very first time when the very first words out of her mouth was wrong kind of witch, and then, you know, she used the iron nails to tear out a man's throat and then drank his blood. I knew I was in love. I knew I was in love. This was the book where we first met Manon. This was the book where we first met Abraxas. That for this smelling, stargazing, love of my life wavering. Like, I love this book. This was also the book where, you know, Kale was more Kale and was dissolving into stupidity, which is understandable, because when you consider it this way, all his life he has been a dutiful soldier. And if there's anything, especially soldiers in Nigeria, they will tell you that the number one rule is that obey without question, right? And when you're somebody like that who is also trying to be honorable, and you do not know when to finally walk away from those orders, then you run the risk of making terrible mistakes, which was what he did, which was what Kale did in Crown of Midnight, and that pissed me the fuck off. And he was still continuing that thread in Heir of Fire, and until the very last moment when he finally decided to get out of Dodge, even though that was after a lot of damage had been done. At this point in time, I started loving Dorian, because there was a part where, you know, he speaks to Kale, and he was telling him that you cannot just love a part of her. If you're going to love her, you have to love her in entirety. You cannot pick and choose which part of her you choose to love. And I was like, wow, who would have thought? Dorian automatically shot up to like one of my favorite characters, and he stayed there. Like, one of my favorite characters in this entire fucking series is Dorian Aviland. I will fight you to protect my son, which is saying a lot, because let's be real though, when I first started the series, I could not stand his ass. Now I would die for his ass. That is character growth, progress. We were also introduced to Aedion in this book, which I love Aedion Ashriver. Like, so many characters, so many great characters. I love how, you know, we slowly got introduced to them. I love how this book slowly started showing just how larger scale the story is, because up to this point we thought it was pretty small scale and pretty limited to Aurelia, but by the time we start moving to other continents, we start seeing exactly the darkness that is spreading across the lands. You realize just how big a scale the story Sarah J. Maas is telling with this series, and I really love this book. Like, I love the multiple alternating POVs. Like, this was the very first time when she started doing that, was it? No, she did that a bit in Crown of Midnight as well, but this was when she actually fully started expanding and started bringing alternate characters, introducing new characters and introducing new stories and everything. She started laying the threads that would eventually connect later on. Although when I think about things that happened in Assassin's Blade, I think she's already started doing that even from Assassin's Blade. Like, she's really good. But this was the very first 5-star book in the series, and that was what paved the way for the rest of what came after it. And then I read Queen of Shadows, which I am not gonna lie, I think is my favorite book in the series, just because, okay, so of all the books in the series, other than of course Kingdom of Ash, I do think that Queen of Shadows could easily stand as the end of the series. Of course, if there was not a larger overarching plot, this story ended a lot of stories, like closed a lot of chapters, and of all the other books in the series other than Kingdom of Ash, it was the only one that really ended and did not give us that much of a cliffhanger, which I really appreciated. So in this book, Selena, who has now finally accepted her identity as Aileen Ashriver Calenthenius in this book, returns back to Aurelia. She's trying to, you know, the end of Heir of Fire had us see Dorian trapped in the most horrible, heartbreaking way, and she's here, she's back home, she's trying to fight for her kingdom. She has accepted her birthright, all the things that you know happened at the end of Heir of Fire to get her to the point of she's the fucking queen and she's ready to take her throne. I love that. I love seeing that. Kale was annoying, very annoying. I know, like, a lot of people, like, the problem with Sarah J. Maas is that when she writes these characters, eventually, like, she gets you to like a character and then turns around and changes that character. My problem though has always been the fact that If you go back and read the books, you would always see traces of what she does is emphasize, like exaggerate, the qualities in those characters that you have seen before and probably always just ignored. Now, Kale has always been caught between his love for her and his belief that, she's a murdering assassin and she's this and blah 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 and everything else. Like, even when she responded to Grave at the end of Crown of Midnight, after that, after he finds Grave, he's all repulsed by what he sees. And I always find it funny because I'm like, you cannot choose, going back to the wise words of Dorian, you cannot choose who you love. You're in love with an assassin and she has been killing for so fucking long. The history, the pain she's gone through since she was a child is something that he did not experience, and to see him judge her through this entire book was so fucking annoying, especially because I know he has kind of been judging her, but it's always been judgment light all this while. In this book though, it's judgment full, and it's just judgment full. That's cool. I'm an idiot, but ignore me please. But it just got so fucking annoying. But I love the fact that we had other characters were getting really invested. I love seeing things from Elite's perspective. Manon is always going to be the love of my life. Abraxos is my baby. Dorian, reading all about Dorian being so broken and trapped, like I was bawling, I was crying. This is a character that I could not stand in the beginning of the series, and now I love and I want to protect. And wow, my mind is just fucking blown. If there's any complaint I have about this book, I do think that there should have been another smaller book in between, because although I loved Aileen and Rowan's reunion in Queen of Shadows, it's just like their relationship just moved into hyperdrive, because when they were coming from Heir of Fire, and then all of a sudden their reunion in Queen of Shadows, and the way all of that went, and then what followed through with all the sexual tension, I was like, is it believable though? Is it believable though? Like, is it? But I could buy it. Like, I was just like, okay, fine. Like, it was just that only bit in my mind. I was like, seriously though, seriously. But I did enjoy it. I love the fact that we also followed through with, like, female friendships / relationships, and we saw it between Aileen's relationship with Lysandra and Eli's relationship with Manon. Like, I love seeing those threads of female friendships. Like I always say, I love female friendship. I've said it earlier in this video, so you know how much I love it, and I love seeing that. And I love the fact that there was that Sarah did address using Aileen, did address the fact that society always likes to pitch young girls against each other and turn it into this competition, because they know inherently that when women band together, when young girls and young women band together and have that bond of friendship, there's absolutely nothing we cannot do. So they always try to split us, which was what we experienced, like saw with Aileen and Lysandra, and seeing them walk through that and come out tops, it made me so happy. And that scene with Arobin and Lysandra, I applauded that. I love that. I loved seeing Aileen's court take shape. I loved how it ended. I loved Dorian's confrontations with his father and that conversation. Like, I loved all of that. I love the fact that throughout this book, we went through, this book was all about releasing the chains from people that have been bound and forgotten and setting them free. We saw that with Adion, we saw that with Dorian, we saw that with Elide, we saw that even with Manon, who did not know that she has been trapped, by her grandmother's hatred for so many years, and she finally gets a chance to break free. And the 13 would always be my fucking heart. So I love this book. I gave this book a 5 stars as well. Then I read the 5th book in the series, which is Empire of Storms. At this point in time, Aileen is on her way to reclaim her throne, except for the fact that she's not allowed to reclaim her throne. Something pretty big happens, and it's up to her to start making alliances and start calling in old debts and old bonds. And I just, seeing the way her mind works, seeing how she strategizes and how she plans, and how neatly all the threads that had been left open from the very beginning of the series, from Assassin's Blade, all come together and entwine and tell this amazing story of Aileen Galathynius and who she is, and the friendships and the bonds she has created over the years to get her to this point, was such a beautiful, beautiful thing to see. Now, This book was heartbreaking, especially the end. Like, I was still like, okay, I was trying to keep charge of my emotions. Manon was, as always, kicking ass, coming into terms with who she is and what her history is. Dorian coming into terms with his powers, and you know, it's just, Elide has always been magnificent. Lysandra blowing my mind. And so many things happened in this book. Every single moment was almost always practically action-packed, and if it was not action-packed, it was laying the ground for more action in the future. Every single time Aileen uses her powers, I feel so happy, and it makes me so fucking happy. And I love the fact that this book was all about, you know, archaical systems trying to step into place to keep like younger people from taking power that is rightfully theirs, because you know, you have to go through the works, you have to make your ways, you have to pay your tithes, you have to pay your due. And I do understand, you know, where that comes from, in the sense that it further makes you even more insistent on taking what is rightfully yours. But I'm not gonna lie, that period when when they had that meeting and it was all like, you are not welcome in Terrace, and I was like, you fucking asshole, how could you say that? How could you do that? What the fuck? But at this point, this wrap up is becoming extra long, so I apologize. If you're watching it up to this point, I'm certain that means you're a Sarah J. Maas fan and you love the series, so that was why I left the other book in front. But I love this. The ending though, the ending broke me. I remember finishing this and being so heartbroken, and I'm like, what the fuck? How can it be? How can it end like this? What the hell? Imagining that there are people in this world who, after this book ended, had to wait years for the next set of books to come out. I just couldn't imagine it. But I gave this a 5 stars. I know this is not the strongest. I know that a lot of things, the story kept moving back and forth, but I love the fact that it was moving back and forth. I love all the characters. I love practically every single moment / instance in this book. In Queen of Shadows, Aileen and Manon met, and their first meeting was magnificent and electric, and I was just like losing my mind and fucking screaming. In this, you could see that there was mutual respect and friendship blossoming. And speaking of friendship, oh my god, all the friendships, this book was so fucking good. And realizing that all this while, every single thing was just leading to the sacrifice bit. Old gods and ancestors can be such fucking assholes. Like, that just broke me, and I was so fucking pissed. But I loved this book. I gave it a 5 star. Sue me, fight me, I don't care. And then we have Tower of Dawn, which, if you all know, like I've stated, I used to love Kale in the beginning, and then Crown of Midnight happened, and Heir of Fire and Queen of Shadows just solidified the fact that I hated him. And then Tower of Dawn was all about his redemption arc, but also all about Irene, who we met in Assassins and the Healer, which I already stated was one of my favorite novellas in that bind of. Like, I loved it. I love seeing her back again. I love seeing how far she had come. Like, from that terrified, frightened girl to this kick-ass healer. I just loved it. And I love the fact that she never forgot the lessons that, you know, she learned from Aileen. Like, I was just like, yes, please, yes, please. This book also had Nesreen. Like, Nesreen kicked ass in this book. Like, just reading things from her perspective in Antika, the Khaganate. Now, I know I'm not going to bother belaboring the point. We all know exactly what the conversation is about Sarah J. Maas and diversity and rep, so I'm not going to get into that. But I guess it's just funny. Like, you see some people complain about, oh, you know what, writers don't have enough rep, and when they finally do put rep, it's just one character of color or one queer character, and they're like, look, that character is there, enjoy, that's your rep. And it's always a by the side character that do not really play any major role, so that happens. And then you have Tower of Dawn, where this place takes place in the southern continent in Antica. I know a lot of people complain about the fact that it took so long for Sarah J. Maas to get here, but she did get here, people. And I love the Khaganate. I love the fact that this is a government made up of only people of color, and it is only in this continent that things actually work right. You know, there's actually equality, you know, across socioeconomic groups, across the gender. There's actually a tolerance of religion. There's actually universal education. There are so many admirable things that are present, that a part of way of living for the people in this continent, and the fact that it's ruled and majorly populated by people of color just made me very happy. I love the Kaganis. I love them. I love Nezreen. I love reading about Satak. I loved, of course, I love Urine. I also love the fact that we also got the redemption arc for Kael, who is still not one of my favorite characters anymore, because there are so many other characters that beat that, namely, you know, Manon, Abraxas, you know, Lysandra, you know, Alide, you know, Fenris, you know, Aileen herself, Rowan, like Dorian. I could have forgotten Dorian. Like, he's a bit Nezreen's, like, he's a bit further down that line, but I do like the fact that we got a redemption arc for him. I like the fact that eventually did come to terms with exactly the double standards to which he has held Aileen all this while, and you know, he accepted exactly the role he played in them breaking up, and it was the fact that I was connected to his healing also made things so much better. And I love the fact that we finally got introduced to Vogue princesses and queens, because you know, all this time we were like Vogue prince and Vogue king, and so at the back of my mind I'm like, it's so funny that this Vogue system is all governed by men, and then you realize that the female of the species would always be the deadliest of the species. And I appreciated that nod, that nod, like, it works. So yes, I definitely did enjoy Tower of Dawn, and I gave this a 5-star. I love the fact, I love the reading about the Sesmetore, reading about all the healers on Eye. In fact, I love this so much, I wanted a separate book just telling me all about, like, learning all about that. I just 5 stars, 5-star read, definitely love it. And finally, this big baby over here, Kingdom of Ash, the last book in the series, which I'm not gonna lie, I cried. This book had me screaming and shouting and crying and weeping and laughing and dancing and grieving. Like, I love these characters so much, and having to say goodbye to them was so heartbreaking. Like, this is the culmination of all we've been reading for the 7 books we've been reading so far, and seeing how they all interwove and met. And I would always say this, I love the way Sarah J. Maas writes war stories, especially because when you realize that a war is not won by a single battle. A war is not a single battle. There are battles you're going to lose and win and lose and win over and over and over again. You're going to win some, you're going to lose some, you're going to forgo some territory, you're going to have to fight to claim them back. And I know a lot of people that read this book did not like the part with the war, because to them it was just very, very repetitive. But that is technically how war is. It's very repetitive. It's consistently pushing and drawing a line in sand and fighting and pushing and running and re-strategizing. And I loved the part of the story that had to do with the strategizing. I love the part that had to do with the characters. Like, we got romance, we got character development. We were still following through with some characters' arcs, watching Dorian coming to his own, watching him master his powers and abilities was a joy to read. Watching Manon kick ass as the, you know, the Cotran Queen, the Iron Witch and Cotran Queen just made me so happy. Ah, goddamn. And I still, watching Aileen, like, ah, goddamn, reading the part about the torture, that would always break me. Aileen's torture, and realizing that that was what she dealt with for 2 months. And even though I was hoping that Sarah J. Maas would not write it, because it was devastating, reading about it was even more so. And that scene when she escapes and she's screaming, take it off, like, I broke down in tears. I closed this book and I just cried and I wept. Like, that was how much this book devastated me. So, like, I was devastated. I love the fact that there was so much high notes and so much terrified for, like, I was terrified for Dorian so many times in this book. Same thing with Manon, the fucking 13. Oh my god, I can never, how could I forget what happened with the 13? That was heartbreak. Like, even with Gabriel, like, what happened with the 13 hit me. But what happened with Gabriel, like, I was still like, oh, I could deal with it. And then later, after I finished the book, like a couple of days later, I'll be doing stuff and it would hit me and I would be bawling all over again. Like, I love this so much. The crowning scene, I love the fact that after a crowning ceremony, there was this bit when it was only the female characters together. And I appreciated that, because, like I said, consistently through this book, it's always been about, you know, friendship, love, and also about female friendships. And seeing that play out in one of the last scenes of this book just made me so happy, because we had come so far. And even when, even there was this part when Aileen was like for Carlton Rompe, and I just started crying because I remember when Carlton and Aileen met in book 1, and that relationship and how that ended, and that guilt Aileen felt for not consistently reaching out and pushing to befriend this girl, for letting society's way of saying that, oh, 2 women always have to be enemies and be, you know, at loggerheads, trying to push that narrative. The fact that she regretted that she didn't push through to befriend Carlton in Queen of Shadows, that was of course after she mended the relationship with Lysandra, and then that call back to this book, just, it broke my heart. And the ending with the gods, the old gods, like, I was just like, that was such an Aileen move to do, and I love that we got that. And as always, I know people be like, oh my god, no major character died. I beg to differ. I beg to fucking differ. But I know what they say by no major character, like a character with a point of view. No major character with a point of view died. And I will say what I've always said. Sometimes you read it, you want a book to destroy you and wreck you, which of course this book did. But I want a book to destroy you and wreck you and leave you with like, and have some major characters die. And then sometimes you just want a book where everything ends happily. And Sarah J Maas, I can always count on Sarah J Maas to give me that. So thank you for that. So yeah. When I want to be depressed, I know the books I'll pick when I want to be depressed. And when I want to be happy, I know the books I'll pick when I want to be happy. And this is definitely one of those series. So those were the books I read in May. All 10 of them. It was crazy. It was insane. But I loved it. It was a very good reading month for me. And I have such high hopes for June. And I'm so sorry. This is going to be a long as fuck wrap up. As always, I apologize for that. Let me know if any of these books are books you've read. What are your thoughts? If you like this video, please do not forget to give it a big thumbs up. Check out my other videos. Subscribe if you want to. I make new videos every Sundays, Wednesdays and Fridays, and I'll see you soon. Until then, stay passionate, love books, love yourself.
You are my strange addiction. My doctors can't explain